The accident happened in May. It was so challenging. I dealt with PTSD, went through weeks and weeks and weeks of therapy to overcome, complicated grief that I was dealing with.
Well, welcome to the Woo Woo and Real Estate Podcast, where I am your host, Tigger Huchel, and where we meld mysticism and real estate investing and intuition all together. And we will do a deep dive into the mysticism eventually and getting into psychic mediumship. And this is where my guest today is also a part of that world. Not so much the real estate world, or maybe you are, that I don't know, that you may have, but Julie Cluff, welcome to the Woo Woo and Real Estate Podcast. I would like to just dive right into you introducing yourself and what you have started. A little bit of like just basically everything from loss, love, and embracing spirit and finding hope in that loss.
Okay, so much there. I'll
Yeah.
just briefly introduce myself. And my connection to real estate is I've bought and sold my own houses. Like, how many houses have we owned? We've moved all over the country, so we've had a lot of
So
experience with
you
that.
do have experience.
And my husband actually just got his real estate license 2 or 3 months ago, and so he's been
Congrats to him. That'll be interesting.
pursuing that. So that's been fun. Um, I am an intuitive mentor, guide, spiritual teacher, angel guide, um, energy coach. Like it's been hard for me to nail down what I do. But most recently, I have been called into this space of religious trauma healing.
Mm.
And that is a
Wow.
whole new space for me that I have felt really called to, and I've been studying and understanding more and more. And so that's an interesting space to find myself in.
I had no idea, and that is amazing. We talked a little bit on our class last night about this, and it's a thing. And I think from my own dynamic of religious background and upbringing, or lack thereof, and then later in life in my adulthood, forming my own thought and what was to be and how it was to be, and this is what is supposed to happen in your religious world. It gets a little um basically you're awakened
Yeah. Yeah.
to all things that you thought you knew was to be the gospel, right? Like, this is the Bible. This is what we need to believe. This is how it does. This is what Catholics do. This is what Christians do. This is what, all the Buddhas, all the things. So anyway, that is very interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd love to go into that. I don't know how much time you have, but I mean, we could go on for hours with this, but
We could, and I have all the time in the world. So if we
okay.
need to do 2 episodes, we can do two
That
episodes.
would be amazing. And I appreciate you for that. So let's go a little bit into the loss side of things. For those who don't know you, Julie, you have lost two of your children.
Yes.
Can you tell us your story? And so I want to cover this because there is several people in my real estate communities that have loss of children, and
Uh-huh.
how I'm bringing in the whole spirituality and intuition, but also the woo-woo and the paranormal side of things into the real estate space. And when I open my mouth and talk about these things, there are so many people that gravitate to me with regards of loss, seeing ghosts, spirits, the whole nine yards. So start by telling us your story with the loss of your children.
Well, I'm kind of grinning, not because I lost my children, obviously, but because for years I have said I stood in the wrong line in heaven before I came here. And every line that said loss, I like apparently I got in and collected this loss and that loss and that loss and that loss, and so my life was a journey of loss and rebuilding. And And the, top three that I talk about quite frequently is losing my brother to suicide.
Mm.
And then a couple of years after that, my first marriage ended, and that was a really unusual circumstances, and I had three young children, and so learning to kind of rebuild my life. My husband had left the country. My ex-husband at that point had left the country, and I had three little children. And it wasn't long after that, like literally, we divorced before our youngest son was our son was even 2 years old. So we separated the weekend of his first birthday. And I don't talk a lot about that, but yeah, there was a lot that went on during that time. A
That is
lot.
a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot. A
Yeah.
lot.
And unusually, what's really fascinating is before my son turned 2, I remarried. And that was
Whoa.
just a crazy ride because in my mind, like you don't make any big decisions after a loss. I felt this need. I had been with my first husband. We had started dating when we were 16
Mm.
and we got married. We went off to college together. We got married when we were 21. By the time we were 24, we had our first child. And then to divorce and remarry, it was 7 months later
Right.
was crazy. Never
There's no
expected
time to
that.
process any of that, right?
Exactly. And then we had three more children. So we ended up with six children. And Ron and I raised those kids together, and we've been married now for 31 years. So apparently it took, but
You stood in the right line for marriage there and having kids, right?
in that case, yes, absolutely. But then in 2007 on Mother's Day, and honestly, I was at that point in my life where it finally felt like, after a lot of upheaval and a lot of challenges, I finally felt like, okay, I can relax. I don't have to wait for the next shoe to drop. I don't have to wait for the next tragedy. And right about that time that I had those thoughts, I was in a rollover car accident with my three youngest children in the car on Mother's Day in 2007. And our two youngest, David, who was 8, and Carrie, who was 10, were thrown from the car. And they died that day, on Mother's Day in 2007.
Wow.
And talking about, just life shattering event. It was life shattering when my brother died. It was life shattering when I went through this really horrific, painful divorce. There were a lot of other things that have happened. Um, but when my kids died, I was like, I was already familiar with grief. I was already familiar with grief and healing to a certain extent, but this was a whole new level of pain, anguish, questions, uncertainty, all the things, shame, guilt. I
Mm.
was the driver of the car. I'd fallen asleep at the wheel. I woke up in the median between westbound and eastbound and westbound lane of highway. And when I tried to pull my SUV back up on the highway, we started rolling and they were thrown from the car. But I want to go back a little bit because there were so many interesting things that happened before the accident, during the accident, and just after the accident that have no explanation.
Mm.
And before the accident even happened, in that 2 months before it happened, it was like, looking back now, I understand that my soul knew this was going to happen. But I did not know what was happening at the time. But I had some really unusual experiences during those 2 months before this accident happened.
Do share, please.
Well, a couple of things
If
that,
you want.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So a couple of things that happened, two that really stand out to me was when I was on a trip with some friends, and my one of my friends, she was known for talking about how like the devil gets in our way and the devil causes all these problems and so on. And I had this like really strong, and she'd done that before, but I had this really strong response, like internal response to that when she was talking about that.
Put off, you mean? Like a put off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I felt like this is not, I just felt this really strong feeling that this is not correct. The devil does not have that much power. We do not need to give the devil power. My feelings about the devil have changed tremendously since then.
Same.
But I and I actually directed her to I just felt compelled. There was like five of us in the car, and I was like, you know what? I think we're giving too much power to the devil. And I actually looked up scripture and found scripture and said, and if I think it's in First Kings, if I remember correctly, where the servant was concerned, said to, I think it was Elijah the prophet. I don't quote me on any of this, but said something like, oh, what are we going to do? The army has come after us, and the prophet said to him, said, open his eyes so he can see. And he saw all the light beings surrounding them and saw the heavenly help. So I think that's what I directed it to. But that was just it was such a powerful experience that it stayed with me. And I know I know now the reason for that was because I could have easily given the experience of losing my kids as like, and I did to a certain extent. Like I had done something wrong and the devil was after me, or, things like that. So that was one experience that I had that wasn't just for that moment, but was for my learning experience. The second experience I had was there was a young lady in our, church congregation who was in her early 30s who died of cancer just after she'd given birth to her child.
Wow.
And I didn't know her very well. I didn't know her husband very well. I knew his parents. So I'd gone to the funeral and I walked into the viewing, and it was like I had this whole download. It's hard to even put it into words, but I had this whole download of how much this young widow who was left with three young children, how much she was loved, how much she was supported. It was so unusual because, like I said, I didn't really even know him that well.
Now this is after the accident
No,
happened.
this was before.
This is before. Wow. Okay. Okay.
So
Because
I
I
was
was
having these
already thinking,
experiences before this accident even happened. These were in preparation for the accident happening, was to help me to first recognize that there was no evil force that was involved in the accident. And second of all, to realize that just because this horrible, tragic thing happened to me, I was still loved.
wow.
Now, it took me a long time to integrate that, but these experiences stood out to me. Then the day of the accident, we were having this tremendously positive trip. We were traveling from our home in Texas to visit grandparents, and it was just me and my three youngest children. So the two kids who'd passed away, and then my son James was 12 at the time. He was in the front seat next to me, and we were having a really good trip. I never even felt tired. Never even felt tired.
And this was the daytime.
This is the daytime. It was the middle of the afternoon.
Wow.
And I had never even felt tired that day. Because a lot of times, when you're traveling, if you're going any distance,
Long.
sometimes you can start feeling drowsy. Never even felt that. And and it was just like it was literally felt like we were all talking and joking around. I was joking around with my son sitting next to me. And then the next thing you know, the whole car went quiet and I fell asleep and I woke up and like I said, when I tried to pull my car back up on the highway, we started to roll. But while we rolled, I heard a voice in my head that said, pull in your arm. It was calm. It was peaceful. When I think back on that voice, it was just a very calm pull in your arm. And somehow I listened to that voice and I pulled in my arm. And it wasn't long after that that I learned about someone who lost their left arm in a rollover car accident.
So you're saying was like the window down and it got thrown out of the car?
Well, all the glass was broken in the
Ah,
rollover, right? And so, um, yeah, so I actually, after that accident, within the next couple of years, I met two people who had lost their arms in rollover accidents. So that was a miraculous thing. And it's also fascinating when we think, okay, if I could hear a voice that saved my arm, why didn't I hear a voice wake me up
wake you up. I was just thinking the same thing.
to save my kids?
Mhm.
I'm also going to take you back to another thing that happened 5 years before this accident. 5 years before this accident, when Carrie was 5 and David was 3, we had just moved into a new house. Speaking of real estate, we had just moved into a new house in Houston and they had gone upstairs. It was springtime. They opened the window to talk to the dog on the pool deck and they leaned on the screen and they both fell out the second story window together.
Wow.
These kids were unusually close for boy and girl siblings.
And they weren't twins.
They weren't twins, they were 2 years apart in age. And when we went back after they passed away and we were looking through pictures, so many of our pictures, the two of them were hugging.
Hmm.
Like picture after picture after picture of the two of them hugging.
This makes me, of course, because we're in the space of the spiritual awakening, this makes me think they knew and they were always meant to be together.
Absolutely. In fact, after they passed away, I was going through Carrie's things and I found a drawing that she had drawn on a church program uh, within, I mean, I think it was within a couple of months of the accident happening. And she had drawn a picture with a little girl, a little stick figure girl with a little skirt on, and she'd written her name over the top, Carrie. And then she had an arrow, and then she drew another stick figure of a man, and over the top she wrote Jesus.
Wow.
And I found that in her things after she died.
You cannot make this stuff up.
No. But there were so many things that happened that I just could not deny. And yet I suffered. I suffered a lot.
I can't even imagine going through that for yourself. And it speaks volumes for you and your husband to still be married to this day after this has happened, because I've heard stories where other people do not make it after the loss of a child. It's difficult as it is, whether it's somebody's fault or nobody's fault, right? To still continue that relationship because at some point or time, maybe that person just can't get over the guilt and the other person is still living and moving forward, but the other person is still stuck living in that guilt and the depression and the hurt and the pain and yeah, all of it.
It was so challenging. Like I mentioned, I dealt with PTSD, went through weeks and weeks and weeks of therapy to overcome all the grief, the guilt, the shame, the trauma, the, you know, complicated grief that I was dealing with. And it was excruciating. But so this happened in May. The accident happened in May. And that October, I walked into a little drugstore, a little corner drugstore, and there were costumes out for Halloween. And when I saw the costumes, the first thing I saw was this flowy witch's costume, and I thought Carrie would love that. And this is the way our brain works, right? Like I'm still in this mode, like my whole system can't even
Let
accept
go.
the fact that they're not here.
Yeah.
And so my first response was Carrie would love that. And immediately she's not here. And
Mhm.
all that heaviness came in again. And in my head, I said, why did this have to happen? And
Mhm.
I heard a voice that said, they're right where they're supposed to be. And I said, but why did it have to happen like this? And the answer came, how would you have liked it to happen? So it's like what energy are we bringing to the situation? When we don't like what's happening, when we don't like what's happening in our family or in our community or in politics, when we bring our hatred to it, when we bring our angst to it, we are adding that energy to the situation. But when we bring love to it, I don't, are you familiar with Dr. David Hawkins' work?
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh, he is fascinating. So he's the one that developed the levels of consciousness. And if you've
Well,
seen
that sounds familiar now.
that scale, it kind of looks like this. And
Oh, did he make the man the medicine like the what you call it man? Or no, that wasn't him with all the different
no, I can show you. Um, let
let you
me,
green here.
yeah, yeah. So I'll just show you real quick. I don't know if it'll let me share.
Here, hang on.
Oh, send request.
There we go.
Okay. So it's like this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you see, like this, these are the levels of consciousness on this outside. He has this numerical scale. 20 is shame or despair, 30 is guilt, 50 is apathy, 75 is grief. At the center, I use this scale a lot in my work. Courage is the dividing point between third dimension. I have not seen this particular one done this way before, but is the point from third dimension to fourth dimension, the way they're showing here. The way I see it is it's the dividing point between um, contracted energy versus expanded energy.
Mm.
Okay. And so here, let me open it up. Um, when this one's a little different than the one that I've seen before, but yeah, this is Dr. David Hawkins. He has multiple books, multiple like just so much. But he did this through muscle testing. They tested these different states of being, these levels of consciousness, and came up with these numerical numbers. But what's interesting is it's not just going from 20 to 30, from shame to guilt. This is an exponent. So if you're familiar with exponents, it's 10 to the power of 20 versus 10 to the power of 30.
Wow.
So one of the things he teaches is that um, if you are in if you are in a state of love or awareness or enlightenment, your energy, because we're looking at 10 to the power of 700,
Wow.
that you um like one person. So if we think of Yeshua, if we think of Jesus Christ as being one person who was enlightened, then he made the difference for like a million people who are unenlightened
Wow.
because his power is that much greater.
That's interesting that you have this chart. We talked about the aura readings. I want to get something real quick.
Oh yeah.
So
I was trying to find my recent aura. Oh, here it is.
so when I went to mine, they gave us all the 24 pages, which I was,
Yep.
I don't know if I like this. Like,
I
it
know.
doesn't really, I mean, I'm not feeling, I wanted my third eye to be wide open, and it was just sort of open. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on
So
here?
it's a snapshot. So
Yeah,
keep,
so let me see. Because yeah, some of those things that you were showing, like I think you saw on the Facebook group this picture here, but
oh no.
anyway, that was mine. And so then they had different, like 24 pages. And so it talks about the solar plexus chakra, and they're only saying, I think this is sort of like what you were saying with that chart of,
Yeah, I have the same.
yeah, is that what they're saying? Is like that chart of,
I don't know. I'm not quite sure exactly. When I look at this chart, I think to me it looks like 0 to 100%.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, well, that's not a lot. I don't have a lot going on here. I don't know about yours, but mine is only like 30%, 40%, 30%, 40%,
Yeah, I
20%.
well, and it is a snapshot. And I know when I did this reading, my throat chakra was the most oh no, my third eye was the most active at 60%. Um, and my throat chakra was like 50%. But this is a snapshot in time. My aura was indigo. Um, so this is what mine looked like. This is the last time I had it done.
Oh my gosh, that's so pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So,
mine, they're saying, so like this one is saying like indigo represents your intuitive energy at 40,000 whatever. And then green is your mental energy at 55,000. Light blue is your emotional energy at 38,000. And then physical energy is for 50,000. So I'm like, what? I don't even know what this very low vibration, high vibration. So basically it's saying I'm low, medium
oh
vibration.
yeah, your energy.
Yeah, I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't want my vibration to be low. I want it to be high.
Yeah. Well, and
Oh,
and it like I said, it's just a snapshot in time. Um, yeah. So I don't put a lot of stock in it, but it is interesting to take a look at.
yeah.
Um, and then you have this like so the other thing that's interesting, and I don't know how many people do this, but there's people that will do so there's also what's called permanent aura layers. Have you
Um,
heard of that?
Here's no.
Uh, Let me find my book. I think it's right here.
So I wish I could do woo woo all day long, but I have to like do this real estate side hustle thing to try to make some money to pay off my debt that I've created,
Right?
the investments of the real estate.
Yeah, I can't find it right now, but if I find it, I'll.
Okay.
But there's permanent aura layers, and there's this lady that I was introduced to. It's actually my when I lived in Salt Lake for a few years. This lady that was my massage therapist. She's like, to you need to go see this lady and have your permanent aura letter aura layers read. And there's all these different aura layers. And so, like, my aura layer closest to me is crystal. And then outside of that is indigo. So, if you heard of indigo children, like, I've
Yeah.
got an aura indigo layer. And then I have, oh my gosh, I can't remember what it's called, blue amber, and then green. So, my outer layer is green. And so all these different layers mean different things, and they all what's what I find really fascinating is and this lady that I went to is writing a book, but I don't know. She's kind of all over the place, this girl is. Like when she did the reading for me, she was like driving around with her kids in the car.
Oh,
I'm
no
like,
way.
she is a little scattered, let's just say. And it was
I
funny.
could see it. Yeah, she's turning. Yeah, I can see that you're, whoever
Yeah,
you're.
yeah, exactly. So, but she was working on a book. But what's interesting is all these, like, if we think about the indigo children, that came in, like, I was born in 62, and I have an indigo layer,
You
which
were
is a,
born in 62. I thought you were younger than me for some reason.
no, no, I'm old.
Um,
I have
I,
11 grandchildren.
what? Wow.
Yeah, four married kids and 11 grandchildren. So, yeah. So, and my oldest granddaughter is turning 16 next week.
Dang.
Yeah, crazy, huh?
That is so crazy.
Yeah. So anyway, these aura layers we pick up. It's kind of like astrology, human design. When we come here, we pick up these layers, and I love the way she explained this. Like you pick up these layers that filter so that you are focused on the work you're here to do. So
Hmm.
fascinating.
I would love to find somebody to do that. So I live in Champaign-Urbana, where it's not really a big city to where I could go do Reiki, do all these cool
I
yoga.
do everything online.
You do? This too? This aura thing?
Yeah. I mean,
I
like I said, she was in her car. We were on the phone. She was
Oh,
like,
that was the lady who did the
oh
aura.
no, no,
Oh,
this one I did at the store in
oh,
town.
but the permanent aura one.
Yeah, no, she read it. She read it remotely for me.
Resonate with you?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. I'd like
yeah,
to get her information. I'd like to check it out.
yeah.
So have you done the Reiki healing, or is that nothing that you don't really
Yeah, I
do?
have. I have actually trained in it. It's not something that
Resonates with you?
it I haven't figured out. I think I was trained in so many other things before I did Reiki that I kind of fall back on the other things that I do. So
Yeah.
I've been, I have a million things I've been trained in. Like I said, spiritual junkie.
No, I
That's
love that. And I would love to be able to, like I said, sit and do woo-woo all day, but I got to get out of this debt that I put aside, which I am. Actually, I just have this knowing that through my real estate connections and dealings, it's led me down a path of lending, finding money for two parties, right? Or a borrower and a lender, but then even more so in the commodity space and getting into Bitcoin transactions and fuel transactions and gold, so commodities. Uh,
right.
and a couple other things that I'm just blown away that people make money doing this. Like what?
So
So
remind me where you live.
I'm in Illinois.
Are you outside of Chicago?
Yeah, south of Chicago, like straight down the middle from Chicago, straight down into the middle of the state, Champaign-Urbana, where the university is, University
Okay.
of Illinois is.
Do you know where Johnston City is? It's a little tiny city at the southern Illinois.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
That's where my dad's family is from. Like
Oh,
before I was born, because they were all in Florida by the time I was born. But
gotcha. Yeah.
um, so Chicago is where they're doing the IONS conference this August.
What is that?
IONS is the International Association of Near-Death Studies.
Ooh, wow. Okay.
It is amazing.
Wow.
There's
So
a lot
I
of good energy.
know that I'm going to go to Egypt. I've always wanted to go to the
Pyramids.
Stonehenge.
Oh, Stonehenge,
Is
yeah,
that
in
what
London.
you say? Stonehenge?
Yeah, Stonehenge
Yeah.
is in London, or it's in
That's where
England.
you went?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I've always known I wanted to go there. I've seen some of like some shows like Outlander that have gone there, and I was like, that's a thing. I know that's a thing, right? Anyway, just I've always believed in aliens my whole entire life. I believed in Sasquatch. Like I just no, and so I'm really drawn to Bashar and his teachings and Sedona.
I'm going to Sedona
Yes, I know. I'm so happy.
in
I'm
two
so
months.
for you. And yeah, I
But I'm
definitely
going with a bunch of muggles, so I don't know how that's going to go. So
um
now it's turned into my husband and my friend that lives outside of Phoenix and her husband. So it's the four of us going, and I'm the only one that's going to be like, but I'm here for the psychics.
same. That's exactly what so my husband, me, and my husband's daughter were up in Sedona for like a day and a half. And they're like, "Oh, I want to go sightseeing." I was like, "I want to go to Bell Rock." And I want to go, I did, that's where I got my aura reading done. And so I was just like, I'm coming back and just doing either a whole week or a couple days by myself just to do what I need to do for myself, right?
Well, it was just going to be my husband and I initially. And then he said, I don't know if I want to go. And he's like, I think we can save money if I don't go. And I said, okay, well, I'll invite Marin to go. So I reached out to Marin and she said, yes, I'll ask for time off. And then I told him Marin was coming. He says, well, I've decided I want to go. And I'm like,
Ah,
okay. So now it's like the four of us and but they'll bring their Jeep and we'll have fun with that too. So
nice. Let me
yeah,
let my dog out. Actually, I should probably get going.
I
I
need to
can.
go too. It
So
was
thank
fun
you
talking
so
to you.
much. I'll have you on again as many times as you'll come back on. We can talk about all kinds of other things.
That'll be fun anytime.
All right, Julie. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Tigger. Bye.
Yeah, bye.